For more than a decade now, a really chilling mystery has been stalking U.S. diplomats, spies, and military personnel all across the globe. We're talking about sudden, debilitating neurological injuries with no obvious cause, just leaving careers and lives completely in ruins. So today, we're going to unravel the investigation into what the world has come to know as Havana Syndrome. And this isn't just some abstract geopolitical puzzle. Not at all. This is a story about profound human suffering. You look at this quote from former CIA analyst Erica Stith, "My brain is broken." Those words, they just capture the devastating personal toll of these invisible injuries, which she believes came from a directed energy attack while she was serving her country. And she's not alone. There are hundreds of stories just like hers. All right, so what is this thing? What exactly are we talking about when we say Havana Syndrome? How did it all start, and what could possibly be behind this wave of unexplained illnesses that has absolutely stumped doctors and intelligence agencies for years? Okay, let's start at the beginning. Our investigation kicks off where it all really went public. In Havana, Cuba, back in 2016. That's when U.S. officials started reporting these bizarre, honestly terrifying sensory experiences, often confined to a single room or, get this, even just one part of a room. Of course, the U.S. government gave it a very official, very sterile-sounding name, Anomalous Health Incidents, or AHIs. But let's be honest, that clinical term barely scratches the surface of the acute, painful, and frankly bizarre experiences that the victims were describing. But the experiences themselves, wow, they were just deeply strange. Victims didn't just feel sick, they heard things. State Department officer Mark Lindsay, who was stationed in China, described this incredibly specific localized sound, like marbles circling down a metal funnel. Think about how weird that is. Others reported these piercing screeches or grinding noises, phantom sounds that literally no one else could hear and no microphone could ever pick up. And look, the aftermath of these bizarre moments, it's absolutely life-altering. The symptoms that came next, from severe vertigo to chronic memory loss, they were almost identical to those of a traumatic brain injury. For so many of these dedicated public servants, this invisible injury meant the sudden, devastating end of their careers. So this thing that started in Havana, well, it didn't stay there for long. The incidents started popping up all over the globe, from China to Europe and even right in Washington, D.C. And as the number of cases grew, investigators began to see a pattern, and a prime suspect started to emerge from the shadows. And just get a load of this. The scale here is absolutely staggering. More than 1,500 U.S. government employees and their families have come forward with these symptoms. This was clearly not some isolated incident. It was looking more and more like a global campaign affecting personnel on nearly every continent. The investigation started pointing in one very specific direction: a notorious unit of Russia's military intelligence, the GRU. We're talking about Unit 29155. And if you know anything about these guys, you know they're a black ops squad linked to poisonings, explosions, and political chaos across Europe. So the implication here is terrifying. What if this wasn't random at all, but an act of war carried out by a state's most aggressive sabotage unit? So how did they build this case? Well, it was this painstaking process of literally connecting the dots. In city after city, from Frankfurt to Tbilisi, this deeply disturbing pattern emerged. Members of Unit 29155 were geolocated in the same area as U.S. officials right around the time these health incidents were happening. These weren't just coincidences. This was a trail of breadcrumbs leading directly back to the GRU. Okay, so having a suspect at the scene of the crime is one thing. That's big. But you need more, right? You need hard evidence linking this specific unit to the specific type of technology that everyone was starting to suspect. The hunt for a paper trail led investigators straight to Moscow. And this really became the million-dollar question. I mean, after years of circumstantial evidence, was there a piece of paper, a document, anything that could tie Unit 29155 directly to the development of a so-called acoustic weapon? And then they found it. The breakthrough came in the form of a document. You could almost call it a receipt. It detailed a bonus paid to a senior officer in Unit 29155, a Colonel Ivan Terentiev, for his specific work on the potential capabilities of non-lethal acoustic weapons. I mean, come on. This was the paper trail. The prime suspect wasn't just in the right place at the right time. They were actively being rewarded for developing the very means of the attack. The evidence trail was getting red hot. But the final piece of this puzzle,
Honestly, it might be the most shocking part of this whole story, the weapon itself. For years, skeptics had argued that a directed energy device powerful enough to cause these kinds of injuries would have to be huge, too large to hide. Well, they were wrong.
And get this, in a highly clandestine operation, the U.S. government secretly paid an 8-figure sum, that's over $10 million, just to get their hands on one of these suspected devices. This wasn't a theoretical exercise anymore. They had a physical object to actually study.
And the device they got, it was a total game changer. Why? Because it was portable, small enough to fit inside a backpack. This solved the whole logistical puzzle. It explained how these attacks could be so targeted, so stealthy, operated covertly from a nearby car or an apartment or a hotel room.
And when they analyzed this thing, the capabilities were just horrifying. It emits pulsed radio frequency energy, the exact type of energy long suspected as the cause. It contains Russian-made components, and terrifyingly, its beam can penetrate right through walls like brick and drywall, and it's effective from several hundred feet away. The Pentagon now has this weapon and is actively testing it.
All right, so let's recap. We have victims, a prime suspect with a clear motive, a paper trail, and now we even have a potential weapon in U.S. hands. It seems like a pretty open and shut case, right? Well, this is where the story takes its most bizarre and confounding turn. This is the central conflict, the big contradiction. On one side, you have a mountain of evidence that points directly at a covert campaign by Russia's GRU. You've got operatives on site, you've got financial receipts, you've got a physical weapon. But on the other side, the official conclusion from the U.S. intelligence community states it's very unlikely a foreign adversary is responsible. These two realities, they just can't both be true. And that leaves us right here with this incredibly unsettling question. All the evidence suggests a new kind of warfare is being waged in the shadows against U.S. personnel. So why would the official response be to downplay it? Are they trying to avoid escalating things with a nuclear power? Or is it something else entirely? The mystery of Havana Syndrome, it seems, is no longer just what it is, but why it remains an official mystery at all.